part of the iMac, okay, part of the iMac, the iMac that we're talking about today is very important. Now, the iMac itself is one of the big starts of PC building, and not even PC building, just PC use in general. First off, iMac itself has a lot to offer. Now, I always have used iMac desktops for college and for other important reasons, but it's the first time I have an iMac in the studio, which I'm using for editing, audio recording for dream beats, all kinds of other stuff. iMac is perfect for latency for audio recording. That's another reason why I choose iMac. Now, this iMac has a lot of good features and a lot of more USB cables than the actual USB. Now, that new iMac though, with the different colors, I don't like that because it's too cheap, doesn't have everything you need. I don't like that one, but let's dive more into that.
How's it going, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls? Jeff Benjamin with the 9 to 5 Mac. In this video, we're reviewing the 2020 iMac. Now, this iMac could be the very last iMac with this design and the very last iMac sporting an Intel CPU inside. But if that's true, I have to say that Apple at least went out with a bang with the 2020 iMac. Let's review it right now. Thanks for watching 9 to 5 Mac. Be sure to thumbs up, click the subscribe button, and then enable notifications with the bell icon so you won't miss any upcoming videos. Alright, so here it is, folks, the 2020 27-inch 5K iMac. On the surface, it looks like the same old iMac, but underneath the hood, there's quite a bit new to talk about. But first, we need to go ahead and get it unboxed. Now, you may have noticed that the actual design on the outside of the box is the same design that Apple used last year. So they didn't even bother changing the design of the box. Instead, what Apple did is just slapped a new sticker on top with all the latest and greatest specifications. So we're going to talk about all what's new as soon as we get this thing completely unboxed. So we're going to go ahead and grab the power cable down here beneath. So there we go, nothing's changed with that. Let's go ahead and pull the iMac out of the box. We'll slide the box aside. Let's take these little styrofoam protector things off. One on that side, one on this side. Now we'll remove the tamper-proof sticker and take the protector sheet off. And we also need to remove the plastic protector that goes all the way around the display. Just grab that off like that. There we go. And there's one more little sheet there at the bottom, and we'll remove that. There we go. So we're in business, folks. So now let's talk about what's in the Design by Apple in California box. So first up is the Magic Mouse, of course. This is just your regular white Magic Mouse. It has rechargeable batteries inside, non-removable, by the way. I love the Magic Mouse for its gestures, but I will acknowledge it has terrible ergonomics. We also have the Magic Keyboard, which is a really great keyboard with enough key travel that's suitable for most people, in my opinion. You also have your little charging port there for your lightning connector. The Magic Mouse also has a charging port as well, but it's on the bottom and you actually can't use it while you're charging, which is just a terrible design. Here in your getting started packet, you have some documentation, you have regulatory information, you have your Apple stickers. Yeah, thumbs up for those Apple stickers. And you also have a cleaning cloth to clean the screen, which reminds me, be sure to check out our screen cleaning tutorial linked up below. You also have a lightning to USB-A cable, which is great because you have a limited amount of USB-C ports on the back of this iMac. Speaking of ports, let's talk about I/O. So right off the bat, I'll tell you, not much has changed here with the I/O. There is one change, and that is the ability to configure 10 gigabit Ethernet instead of gigabit Ethernet for an extra $100. So just keep that in mind. So you have your 3.5 millimeter headphone input, you have your SD card input right here, and then you have 4, yes, count them, 4 USB-A ports. Seems like a little bit of overkill. In my opinion, I would have preferred to have 2 extra USB-C ports, even if they weren't Thunderbolt 3 capable. Here are your 2 Thunderbolt 3 USB-C ports, and that is one of the major deficiencies of this 27-inch iMac. Only having 2 Thunderbolt 3 ports, the Mac Mini has 4. So, I mean, you have just 2 here on the iMac. That is a definite bummer. We'll talk about that a little bit later. And then, like I said, you have gigabit Ethernet standard, but you can also configure this now for 10 gigabit Ethernet for just $100 more. So if you want to connect to a Synology NAS that has 10 gigabit Ethernet, this is a great option. On the opposite side, you have your power button. And I just have to say, man, as outdated as the design of this iMac looks, the build quality is still spectacular. You see your power socket, and then right below that, you see the Kensington security slot. And then right above the power socket, you have your RAM door and the exhaust port for your iMac. So this iMac has a 27-inch 5K display, and the great thing about this design is that you can move the display literally with a pinky and it stays right in place. It's so easy to move and adjust. It doesn't go up and down, but you can tilt it. You'd be hard pressed to find any third-party monitor on the market that has as good functionality in this manner as the iMac. It is just second to none. Granted, the design has been around for a long time and it is in desperate need of a refresh in my opinion, but still, there's no denying the fact that functionality-wise and design-wise, the 27-inch iMac is super practical and about as timeless as you can hope to imagine a product in today's fast food society where, you just have a product one day and you throw it away the next day. Once this design is gone, I think a lot of people, including yours truly, admittedly, are going to look back on this design with fondness. Now, in this review, I am specifically focusing on the entry-level $1,800 base configuration, and I want to discuss the value of the base configuration in this particular video. So let's get started with the nitty-gritty details right now. We're going to start off with memory. Now, the iMac comes standard with 8 gigabytes of RAM, but you can configure up to 128 gigabytes for the first time for a whopping 20. So that's taking your $1,800 iMac and making it $4,400 to upgrade to that RAM. Now, in another video, I showed you how you could upgrade the RAM yourself and save $2,000 if upgrading to 128 gigabytes like I've done here. But you can also upgrade to 64 or 16 even, or 32, whatever the case may be, whatever your needs are. So for the first time this year, Apple is allowing iMac users to configure up to 128 gigabytes. That'll give you lots more headroom to run multiple applications, and it'll also boost your CPU performance. As you can see here, I gained almost 1,000 points in my Geekbench multi-core score by upgrading that 8 gigabytes of RAM. So that's the great thing about the 27-inch iMac, is that it has a little RAM door on the back to upgrade yourself. Now, for the first time, the iMac gets the Apple T2 security chip. Now, this chip does obviously security-related things. It has the secure enclave, which allows for secure boot and encrypted storage, but it's also a jack of all trades. And that's because it consolidates multiple controllers on a single chip. So you have, for instance, your SSD controller, system management controller, audio controller. It allows for things like, hey, you know who. It also allows for the very first time a 1080p Full HD camera. And here's my colleague Miles Somerville talking about the camera and microphone upgrades.
The Apple webcam built into the iMac had far better color reproduction, much better dynamic range. It's honestly crazy to see how badly the Logitech Brio compared to the iMac's webcam. As far as the iMac, I can definitely tell the difference between the microphone on this machine and, let's say, something like my MacBook Air. I'm thinking anyone who needs a higher quality mic than this probably already has that microphone. So anyone who just wants to use something solid for Zoom calls and stuff like that, this should be plenty fun.
Thanks, Miles. Now, let's talk about storage, because for the very first time, the base model iMac now gets an SSD standard. In other words, goodbye horrible Fusion drive. Unfortunately, you only get 256 gigabytes of flash storage on the base model, but that'll usually be enough for the operating system and all of your applications. Notice the speed here. It's not a barn burner by any means, but it's definitely faster than the Fusion drive. And the key is you'll get relatively consistent speed. As you upgrade that SSD flash drive, you'll get even faster speeds. Now, that being said, if you compare that drive to something like the OWC Envoy Pro EX, which is a 4 terabyte Thunderbolt 3 SSD, you can see the speeds on that guy are much faster than the SSD inside of the base iMac. But either way, your speeds will be better than the Fusion drive. For instance, back when I reviewed the 2019 iMac, I copied a 500 gigabyte file from my Mac to an external SSD and it took forever. But watch what happens when I do the same thing here, copying a file. Granted, it's not 500 gigabytes, but nonetheless, you see the speed there, the sheer raw speed of flash storage when compared to a hybrid drive like the Fusion drive. Now let's talk about that 10th generation Intel Core i5 CPU. So right off the bat, you're going to notice, yes indeed, speeds are better than the base model 2019 5K iMac. And that should come really as no surprise. But the cool thing here is that with this latest iMac, you can actually upgrade to a 10-core Intel i9 CPU. If you want to see a video on that, leave me a thumbs up below and let me know. But take note of the multi-core score, 6437, and here's the multi-core score from last year's base model, 5084. So that's a not insignificant jump between year models. And compared to something like a MacBook Pro, the iMac's great because it has lots of room for cooling, and it can keep that CPU cool even when under load for sustained periods of time. So here I'm transcoding some video files, and you can see that thing is just pegged at the top, and it is working hard, all 12 of those threads working diligently. And I must say, the fan is a little bit loud, certainly much louder than the iMac Pro. Now let's talk about graphics, because this is a big deal. So this iMac is going to be pretty good for gaming. So if you're an Apple Arcade subscriber, it works great for games, video editing, etc. Now, the base model is stuck with the Radeon Pro 5300. You actually can't even upgrade unless you jump up to the $2299 high-end configuration. But even this base model, as you can see, 63 frames per second in our Heaven benchmark. Compare that to last year, 46.8. So a pretty big jump between these 2 year models. And the same thing goes for the Valley benchmark. Basically what I'm saying is games are going to perform, generally speaking, quite decently on this iMac. And we can look at some of the metal benchmarks. So I ran graphics bench metal here, and you can see the Radeon Pro 5300, 4 gigabytes of RAM, how that compares to a MacBook Pro / eGPU setup. So you can pause right here. It's actually fairly impressive what you get out of this GPU. But of course, what I am very passionate about is Final Cut Pro 10 performance, right? Here is one of my favorite benchmarks. It's an oldie but goodie. It is, of course, Bruce X. So this runs the Bruce X benchmark, which basically has a really short but very complex timeline there, and it exports in about 18 seconds. And that's actually pretty decent for an entry-level iMac. But one of the cool things is that this is a Navi-based GPU, so it's going to have enhanced HEVC/H.265 encoding / decoding for 4K and 8K. So you're going to have improved performance exporting and playing back high-resolution H.265 video files. But I also wanted to concentrate just on timeline performance in Final Cut Pro 10. So I have an unrendered timeline that's playing back at full resolution here. And look, you can see it's unrendered, and I just click and it plays immediately. There's no hesitation there. Media starts playing back as soon as I click. You can see the Radeon Pro 5300 doing its thing, and as you can see, playback is pretty smooth. This is H.264 video I've imported from my Canon EOS R, and it's playing back without having to be transcoded and no rendering. Also tried out a few games like Sonic Racing. Now this is going to look a little choppy because this is a 24 frames per second video, so just keep that in mind. But that was a pretty smooth experience, as were other games that I tried out. Now let's talk about the display, because actually some things have changed. Even though it looks the same, some things have changed with this 2020 iMac. First of all, you get True Tone support. So it's going to automatically adjust the white point of the display based on ambient lighting for more accurate colors. You also get, for the very first time, Pro Display XDR native resolution support. Last year's model was capped at 5K, so here you see pixel doubled, 3008 by 1692, which translates into the real 6K resolution. If you double it here, it's obviously running in Retina mode, but if you want just straight up 6K, you can do that as well by using the scaled options. Now watch how smoothly I can enter and exit full screen mode on this 6K display. It's butter smooth. That's impressive. Now, as a Pro Display XDR user, I definitely noticed there's more reflectivity with this iMac. It's very noticeable. But the cool thing is, this year you get the option to configure nano textured glass, and this was previously exclusive to the $5,000 Pro Display XDR. So you can get this option for $500. So it etches into the glass at a nanometer level to reduce reflectivity, but it also allows you to maintain higher fidelity than your typical matte display. If you want to see a review of that, leave me a thumbs up. So the 2020 5K iMac. It's kind of a weird release because we know that this is probably, very likely, the last iMac that we're going to see with an Intel CPU inside. Apple is transitioning over to their own CPUs in future Mac releases. So that means it's very likely as well that we're going to see, yes indeed, a brand new iMac design to correspond with that new Apple silicon. So if you buy this Mac, you're going to have to be okay with having something that looks super outdated in possibly the next year. It's akin to buying the last model year of a vehicle and then having to watch everyone else have the newest version of that vehicle the very next year. You may not even care about that, but it's something to keep in mind. But here's the thing, it's possible that the CPUs and GPUs that we're going to see in this next iMac are going to have much better performance than what we've seen from Intel and AMD over the last few years. So keep that in mind as well. But here's something else, since Apple is transitioning over to their own chips, that means that Boot Camp will likely be left behind with the old Intel chips. So that means you're not going to be able to install Windows and dual boot Windows like you can currently on this iMac. And that, depending on your needs, how you use your Mac, could be a definite disappointment. So just keep that in mind. Be prepared to give up Windows Boot Camp support. And that means all your favorite Windows games, if you like to game on Windows on your Mac, that's going to be a thing of the past. Now here's another potential negative of a redesigned iMac. It's likely that Apple's going to get rid of the ability to upgrade the RAM yourself. So that's such a nice feature on these 5K iMacs, but that's probably going to go away too. Now, one thing I don't like about this iMac and all the 5K iMacs is that they lack an extra Thunderbolt 3 bus. So you get just one Thunderbolt 3 bus shared between two Thunderbolt 3 ports, and that's okay. But for instance, if I have a Pro Display XDR connected and I have an SSD connected, Thunderbolt 3 SSD, I'm completely out of Thunderbolt 3 ports because there's no daisy chaining with those two devices. And there's the fact that if you connect two bandwidth hogging devices like two SSDs for instance, they're going to compete for bandwidth over that single bus, which will reduce performance. And that's why it just kind of annoys me, because even the Mac Mini has 4 Thunderbolt 3 ports and 2 Thunderbolt 3 buses. So I know that was a lot to digest, but I have to say overall, this entry-level $1,800 iMac is it's a phenomenal value for what you get. You get a 5K display, still one of the nicest displays you can buy. You get solid CPU and GPU performance even on the base model, the ability to upgrade RAM, a better webcam, a better 3-array microphone, slightly better speakers. It's just an overall great value. But all that comes with one big catch. And that is, this is probably the last iMac we'll see with this design and with Intel CPUs. If you really need a new machine, you could do far worse than the 2020 iMac. But if you can wait, I think you should wait. Be sure to leave me a thumbs up because that helps other people find this video, and let me know what you guys think down below in the comments. This is Jeff with 9 to 5.
MacBook seems to have a lot of cool features with it. Important you get one.